Hi, I'm Katie Brandon. I'm the director of the Red Center for Learning and Academic Growth, and I'm here to talk to you about the type of support we offer at Salisbury School. I wish you were here with me so that you could ask questions, but just know that at the end of the presentation, if you still are not sure about the type of support we offer or have specific questions regarding your son, you can email or call anytime to fill in that information. So going to just go through the general information about the Learning Center. And like I said, it will be different to not have you here and ask questions, but we will do the best we can to make sure you have all the information you need regarding academic support. So the Red Center is all one-on-one. It's during the academic day and during a student's free block. So our Learning Center tutors create schedules with their students in the Learning Center to make sure it makes the most sense for their class schedule and their academic workload. There are 18 of us, all full-time faculty, learning specialists. I'm a reading specialist, and we have a few other reading specialists. Then there are those who their expertise is in math, and all of us, I think, are under that category of executive function coaches or specialists. No matter what type of support students are receiving, we go through all of that: time management, study skills, organization, making sure that they're set up to be as successful as possible at Salisbury. And I'll get into the level of support and type of support that we offer in a little bit. One of the most important things about the Learning Center is the communication and partnership between the faculty, teachers, you guys as the parents, making sure we're kind of a team for each student, and that the boys feel like we're all in their corner and have their best interests in mind. So the learning specialists communicate regularly with students, teachers, and advisors to ensure that we all are aware of how the students are doing and what they need, what we can do on our end in the one-on-one atmosphere, and things that are helpful or may be helpful in the classroom or outside of the classroom. All the tutors, one of the things that they communicate with the teachers and advisors are the students' profiles. So over the summer, I spend time going through psychoeducational neuropsychological testing, and that's how support is determined. But what's important about that is that's the information that's shared with the boys' teachers, so that in the beginning of the school year, they have at least a general idea of strengths and weaknesses, what the students may struggle with, areas that they're working on in the Learning Center. And as we get to know these students as humans and not just on paper, we fine-tune those profiles. And one is really just a summary of their testing reports if they have it. But for the students who don't have testing, we also have what's called the prescriptive learning plan. And what's included in that is a lot of the same stuff, but how it's manifesting at Salisbury. Because as you know, testing reports are great, and they're an amazing blueprint for how a student learns. But they don't always tell us, anything about how that student's learning profile will manifest at Salisbury. And that's kind of our job, to make sure the teachers are aware of, what we notice on our end and what can be helpful in the classroom. So those are two ways that we communicate kind of on paper, but the communication is always going back and forth regarding the students who are enrolled in the Learning Center. The enrollment process starts really now. I've had conversations with many of you regarding your sons and the fact that you feel he may, need support. And then as we wrap up this school year and get into the summer months, that's when I start making recommendations for support. So whether I reach out to parents or you guys reach out to me, it's often kind of a conversation that starts way before school starts. And what happens is I make a recommendation based on the information I have. If your son has received support in the past or is currently receiving support and you feel that he definitely will continue to need that support, I will do my best to make sure we match him with the right learning specialist, have the right number of sessions set up. And then again, that's something that's fluid over the course of the year. We may think that, your son needs math support and reading and writing support, and then something clicks with his math teacher, and we, can decrease the amount of support in the learning center because he's doing well in a class that he maybe thought he would not. So a lot of times the plan, it changes based on how things are going. And the overarching goal is that eventually the support will decrease. But sometimes it increases because maybe we are not exactly sure how a student is going to do in a certain area. So, but we put everything in place that we know or think your son will need, and then adjust as we go. And another way that students can enroll in the Learning Center is during the academic year. About a third of our students use the Learning Center at any given time, so around 100. But then there are students who start the year without a Learning Center tutor and maybe start to struggle in an area that they didn't, they weren't able to predict in the beginning of the year. And in that case, advisors reach out to me and start that process to get support plugged in for one of their advisees, or parents reach out to ask about the support that's available. And that can happen at any point throughout the year. So even if a student isn't enrolled in the Learning Center out of the gate, first day of school, we always are accepting students throughout the year because, again, needs change. All of the sessions, and I mentioned this a little bit in the beginning, even if I'm a reading specialist, many of my students get support for specific skills that they have challenges with, whether that's reading, writing skills. And in addition to that, every student needs that, and when I say every student, typically every student needs some help with time management, even if they consider themselves organized. Sometimes just adjusting to the system at Salisbury and the systems that we have in place at Salisbury takes a little bit of time and some modeling, whether that's to how to use the planner, or if the planner is not something that's working, what's another way we can keep track of assignments and tests coming up and due dates. So no matter what type of support a student is enrolled with, in the beginning of the year, I think a big portion of that is really just helping the students learn how they learn. Sometimes they don't know what they don't know, and kind of uncovering those skills that need strengthening. Oftentimes that's advocacy skills. So if a student is less likely to ask a teacher for extra help, maybe scheduling those sessions into their schedule. And oftentimes that's what we do as tutors, is making sure the students have everything in place so that they don't feel that it's too late sometimes, or that they can't go and ask for help because it's not in their schedule. And then other students receive more prescriptive and skills-based support. And that, like I said, is determined over the summer and also throughout the year. If a student has a diagnosed learning need that we know, he will need to be with a learning specialist with a background that will, they will be well versed in those skills. And that's part of, matching them with the right person. And then some students just know that they have always struggled with math or with reading or writing skills, and all of those skills are kind of being strengthened with the help from teachers, but also our math tutors often will be able to explain something in a different way that helps make things click. Also reviewing material, pre-teaching or reteaching material that maybe didn't sink in the classroom or, during study hall. So we're kind of, it's supplementary support that we give for math skills and also reading and writing skills. Subject specific support. So if students come to me and say, I really need a history tutor, my first question will be, have you seen your teacher for extra help? And if he says, well, like, I don't know if, he's able to help with what I need. Regardless, it's always a really smart move for students to make an appointment with their teacher, or at least say, is there a time this week that we can sit down and talk about, potentially getting more help with the subject matter. The reason for that is that the teachers are the experts in the subjects, and we're kind of the experts on how boys learn and how to get them to understand how to be their best selves in the classroom. And part of that is asking for help and knowing how and where and who to ask for help. But we don't have like a chemistry tutor and a history tutor. Many of our Learning Center faculty have strengths in certain areas, and I use that information. If a student historically has struggled in history, we do have learning specialists with strong history backgrounds, and I sometimes will match them when appropriate. However, the teachers are amazing in offering their time to make sure the students feel supported with the content. There's also other support on campus that students can use as supplementary to their Learning Center support, or sometimes if a student thinks that he needs a math tutor, I will ask, have you gone to Math Cafe, which is when math teachers are available to offer support, and students can go during their free blocks and meet with different math teachers, not necessarily just their own math teacher. Writing Garage, the English department holds sessions where they can help students with the proofreading and editing process. And then we also have a peer math tutoring program. So oftentimes students in the Learning Center use those supports as well, or sometimes that's enough, meeting with teachers and going to the other support services like the Math Cafe, Writing Garage, and peer math tutoring. The goal is that any support students need here, we can provide as a school. Rarely do we see students who need, outside tutors. We really don't have outside tutors coming on campus to give the students extra help, because we provide it through either the Learning Center or from the teachers. The next thing I want to make sure I cover, and again, you may have specific questions about your son and his accommodations, but just know that that's a huge part of the process. Before the school year begins, I go through all of the testing reports that are available, and that includes any 504 plans or IEPs that your son may have, and make sure that the accommodations that he will need are in place before the school year begins. Some of the recommended accommodations that testing reports have, we don't always find the need for here. For instance, if it says, a quiet, separate location for testing, all of our classes are quiet and small, and so testing in the classroom typically isn't a problem for students who have that recommended accommodation. So that's just an example of going through the accommodations and making sure they're appropriate for Salisbury. The very common ones, and the ones that many of our students have, not just students in the Learning Center, are extended time on tests, computer for longer written assignments and written tests, calculator for math exams or math work when appropriate, and audiobooks. We also give foreign language waivers when appropriate. That's something that needs to be documented and recommended, and also makes sense for the student. So like the support that we give, the accommodations are also prescriptive in the sense that we make sure that it's the right fit for the student at Salisbury at the time. And sometimes even students with a foreign language waiver, I will recommend they try a language and see how they do at Salisbury. And sometimes it's really a source of confidence if a student does well, even though he knows he can be excused from it in terms of the graduation requirement. So we work with you and with your sons to make sure all the accommodations in place make sense and are in their best interest. And we also, I make sure the teachers are well aware of the testing accommodations, because they are the ones who are going to be putting them in place. So that happens before school starts as well. And then once students have school accommodations, they are automatically kind of in the process for standardized test accommodations. So our testing coordinator applies for any accommodations that are in place already, so that students can get the same accommodations, or if appropriate and where appropriate, for the tests like SAT and ACT, and including AP tests. So overall, we want, and part of this is, the goal for the end of a student's Salisbury experience is that they don't need us. So it's to empower students to become familiar with their learning profile, more confident in every area, even those areas of weakness, so that they are independent learners. And so we try to decrease support over time in preparation for college. And also here it's, we're putting it in place for them, but when they're in college, they're going to have to likely ask for it and advocate for it. So that's why those advocacy skills are very important. That doesn't mean that seniors do not use the Learning Center. It just often looks different. So when they begin, if a student begins as a freshman or third former, as we call them, they may have 3 sessions a week with a learning specialist and see their teachers when they need even more than that. And by their senior year, perhaps they just come to see their learning specialist once a week to check in. And that conversation or session often goes from the learning specialist doing a lot of the modeling and saying, okay, take out your planner, let's see what assignments you have. Do you have any tests coming up? How's that long-term project going, to the student having that conversation and leading that conversation. Well, here's what I have coming up this week. I already studied for about an hour for this. I'm going to do a little bit more today. It's just, that's the goal. And when that starts to happen, that's kind of when we know it's working. And sometimes we'll say, you don't need me anymore. And that's an awesome time. We want that to happen, especially in the last year, but even the last trimester before they head off without us. So I feel that's all you need to know in terms of the general information. I'm sure there will be questions. I think that most importantly, it's all, especially right now, everything is a little unsettling, and everything's going to be new for you and for your sons. And my goal is to let you know that if your son is coming to Salisbury, that we will support him. And it's hard for me to sit here and tell you exactly how, because it's so individualized, and no 2 students have the same support plan. And that's purposeful. We want to make sure that we're giving them what they need, as individuals, not just based on a testing report, but, we do take that information into account and then get to know them, like I said, as humans. And that's the most exciting time, is those first few weeks of school, is, building that relationship. And I think the biggest part for us in the Learning Center, and the part I'm most grateful for, is that one-on-one time, because we do get to know them really, really well pretty quickly. So often by Parents Weekend, which is about 4 or 5 weeks into school, we have a really solid understanding of how your son learns, and what more he may need, or maybe he won't need as much as we thought in terms of Learning Center support. So it's all kind of a fluid process that we work to get as close to perfection as possible. And most importantly is that he knows that we are in his corner, and that every student in the Learning Center feels like no matter what, he knows where to go for support and feels comfortable with the person or people he's working with. So, like I said, normally this is where I would say I talk too much, and now it's your turn to ask questions. And like I said, I wish you were sitting right in front of me to ask questions based on what I just said. But hopefully after you watch this and think about it a little bit, and maybe you're watching it with your son or you can watch it separately, please feel free to reach out with questions. You can email me, and if talking on the phone is better, or even a Zoom call, we can do that as well. But you can email me to set up a time to do that. And I'm happy to answer anything that I may have missed because I'm sure there's something. But I hope you got something out of this and have at least a general understanding of what we do in the Red Center. And very excited to get to know you and your son. Have a great day and stay well out there.